Math 12A. So you have a test tomorrow, Wednesday, at 11 o'clock for most of you. I've had to do a little bit of playing. So we are going to do a test tomorrow. I've already done a review. I've answered a bunch of questions. If you were like, I don't remember what's on the test, go back and watch the review. It's there for you. Kind of like that about videos. I am actually going to start into chapter 9 today. Section 9.1 is an easy one, so we're going to start off nice and easy. I love chapter 9 because it's actual practical stuff that you might actually use. So one of the things we want to talk about in section 9.1 is we actually want to talk about how do they figure out how much you make. And that can actually be done differently depending on the job that you have. For most of you, the job that you have right now pays per hour. You make so much per hour, and voila, you're done. But if you have a full-time job and you are paid hourly, if you work over 37 and a half hours, your boss is legally bound to pay you overtime. And overtime is what we call time and a half, which means you get paid like 1.5 times whatever your hourly wage is. If you have to work on holidays, sometimes they'll pay you double or even double time and a half, which is awesome. My cousins used to work in a movie theater, and they used to have to work like on Christmas Day, and they actually wanted to work on Christmas Day because they got paid so much more per hour. But there's lots of other ways that you can earn your salary. For instance, both my husband and I, because we don't have like hourly work type jobs, we both have like careers. We are paid a salary, meaning we are paid so much per year no matter how many hours we work. There's no such thing as overtime for us because I get paid the same amount whether I work 50 hours a week or whether I work 10 hours a week. Now, if I work 10 hours a week all the time, I'd get fired real fast. Same with my husband. But so during this wonderful pandemic time, my husband's work has not been as busy, but he still gets the same paycheck that he's always gotten because he's not paid per hour. He is paid by salary. There are other things. If you're a waiter or a waitress or a bartender, you can earn money through tips. If you are a salesman, you sell cars or you sell trailers or you sell furniture. Sometimes they work on commission, and sometimes meaning they get a percentage of what they sell. Sometimes it's a combination of those things. So we're going to look at a few different scenarios and how that's worked out. Again, if you can add, subtract, multiply, divide, you can do this. And I want to talk about a couple of terms. There's a couple of terms that we're going to talk about more in depth, but ones that you will hear is people will say, what is your gross pay and what is your net pay? Those are two different things. Gross pay, like when someone says, oh, I make $40,000 a year, they're talking gross pay, which means they're talking that is what on paper the company is paying them to work. However, that is not the amount of money that they actually get to take home because there's so many deductions, there's so many things that come off of your paychecks, such as CPP, which is Canadian Pension Plan, EI, which is Employment Insurance, taxes, both federal and provincial taxes come off. For you guys, if you've had a part-time job, some of those things currently come off of your paycheck. Some, though, do not because you are not over 18 yet. So some of those things you don't have to pay into yet. There's lots of other things like union dues, things like my husband is part of like an engineer's thing. He has to pay to be part of that. That can come off his paycheck. Medical insurance can come off. My husband and I both have we both work for companies who put money away for us for a retirement plan. That comes off of the paycheck before we even see the money. So gross pay is, on paper, that's what you make. So I make like $40,000 a year. Net pay is what you actually get to take home to live on. In Canada, unfortunately, the difference between your gross pay and your net pay for a lot of people is you make about, like, what you get to take home is between half and 75% of what you actually make on paper. So if you make $40,000 on paper, likely what you're actually taking home to live on is somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 to actually live on. As we go through this chapter, those are things we're going to learn how to figure out. And again, we're actually going to do a simplified version of it because the way the government does it is actually really, really complicated, but it at least gives you an idea. But today we're going to talk about just how do you make your money? How do they figure out how much to pay you before they ever take anything off, okay? So example 1 is easy. I'm on page 528, and it's just earning an hourly rate. So, you get paid $15 an hour. You work so many hours. How much money do you get to take home? Okay, so easy, just easy. So, Suanna is a financial assistant, and she gets paid $15.50 per hour for every hour that she works for her full-time 37 and a half hours per week. That is a full-time job. A full-time job is 37 and a half hours per week. Now, she is paid time and a half for overtime. So she is paid 1.5 times. That's time and a half. Time means her regular time. So she's paid time and a half for overtime. So anything over 37 and a half hours. So 1 week she worked 45 hours. So the question is, what was her gross income for the week? In other words, on paper, before they did any deductions, what did she make? What did she earn? So first off, let's talk about hours. She works 45 hours. So if she works 45 hours and 37.5 hours are regular work days, let's do 45 minus 37.5. That means she actually did 7.5 hours of overtime. All right, so for the regular 37 and a half hours, she makes $15.50. So $15.50 for 37 and a half hours. I don't know why I put a 0 there. You don't need to. So if I do that, if I multiply those, $15.50 times 37 and a half, she makes $581.25 if she works absolutely no overtime. However, she did work overtime. She worked 7.5 hours of overtime. Now, for overtime, she gets paid time and a half, which means she gets paid $15.50 plus another half of that. So really what you do is you just take $15.50 and you multiply it by 1.5, and that is $23.25. So she gets paid $23.25 per hour for her overtime hours. So she works 7.5 of those. So 23.25 times 7.5 is $174.38. So what did she make in total? Well, she made $581.25 for her regular work week, right? These are regular hours. And she made $174.38 in overtime. And so in total, we just add those together. Whoops, 581.25. So in total, she made $755.63 for that week. Now again, that would be listed as her gross pay. And then what she would see on her pay stub, because we don't get paychecks anymore, or most people don't. If you get a paycheck, that's very odd. Most people get a pay stub because their money gets directly deposited into their bank. Before we had direct deposit, your boss actually handed you an envelope that had a check in it, and that was your paycheck. So this, what you would see on your pay stub is you would see this would be listed as your gross income, and then it would say minus such and such an amount for federal tax, minus such and such amount for provincial tax, minus such and such an amount for Canadian pension plan, and whatever other deductions are coming off. And then you would see something that says net pay, and you would see another number that would be significantly lower than this, and that would be what actually got deposited into her bank account for her to actually live on. So if she made this, deposited into her bank account would probably be closer to about $500 after all deductions were done. So that's just straight hourly wage. Again, nothing fancy. All I did was some multiplying and some adding, and that's really all I did. Oh, and a little bit of subtraction. So another way that people can earn money is if you are in the food service industry and you are a waiter or a waitress, you can earn tips. In fact, and I'm not sure if this is still true or not, I keep meaning to check into this and I keep forgetting. It used to be, and maybe it still is, I'm not sure, but if you are a waiter or a waitress, if you are a server, your boss doesn't actually have to pay you minimum wage. They can pay you a certain amount less than minimum wage per hour because they know you're going to make up that amount in tips. Okay, so very typically, a waiter or a waitress, even if they do make minimum wage, they don't make much more than that because the boss knows you're going to make a pretty big chunk of change by tips. And so they don't pay you as well to be a waiter or a waitress, but it is still a good job because of the tips. It was not good enough for me to want to stay being one, though. I was one. I have horror stories. All right. But you know me, I can't keep my mouth shut. So when people were stupid, yeah. All right. So in example 2, Tom has a choice of working at 2 restaurants. So he's trying to decide which one to work at. So one of them is named Plato's Restaurant. And at Plato's Restaurant, he's going to get paid $8 an hour. Remember, these are old textbooks, so prices are kind of out of date. And he can average $25 per day for tips. Okay? That's not really very good because, like, when my husband and I go out to dinner and if it's just the 2 of us and we just order something cheap, I mean, we are still tipping like probably $8 to $10 just for our meal. So you can imagine if they're serving 30 or 40 people a night, right? At $10, that's pretty good money. At Donelda's, I don't know who names their restaurant Donelda's, but at Donelda's, he gets paid $7.25 per hour, so he gets less per hour, but he can get paid $40 per day in tips, but there's a catch to that. And the catch is 25% of those tips actually go to the kitchen staff. This sometimes happens in restaurants because, like, say, the people who clear off your table, the people who are washing dishes in the kitchen, they're not getting tips. So sometimes, or even like the person seating you, the hostess, they're not getting tips. And so sometimes what happens is the restaurant has a policy that a certain percentage of your tips has to be given to a fund for them, goes into a big pot, and they divide it up. Sometimes all tips go into a big pot and they just get divided up. Now they don't do that so much anymore, because if you're a really good waitress and people love you and they tip really well, it's not really fair if you are splitting your tips with a waitress or a waiter who is a crappy server and doesn't get very good tips because, you know, they spill stuff all over people or they're rude or something. So if Tom works on average 35 hours per week, spread out over 5 days, the question is, which restaurant would be better for him to work at? So at Plato's, it's pretty easy. He's working 35 hours a week at $8 an hour. So 35 times 8 is $280. Plus, he gets $25 a day for tips, and he's going to work for 5 days. So 25 times 5 is 125. So in total, he's going to make $405 per week at this restaurant. So what about this one? At this one, he's only making $725 per hour for 35 hours, which is $253.75. And he makes $40 a day for 5 days, which works out to be $200. However, 25% of that has to go to the kitchen staff. So I would multiply this. So he only gets to keep what? 75% of it. So I'm going to multiply by 0.75 because he gets to keep 75% of that. So 200 times 0.75 is $150. So he's really only going to get to keep $150 of those tips. So $253.75 plus $150 in tips brings us to $403.75. So technically speaking, he's going to make more at this restaurant, but it's not a significant amount more. So if, for instance, he liked the people he was going to be working with better at this restaurant, he might be better off to go here. Or if, you know, this was an up-and-coming restaurant, and so, you know, that $40 per day might be a low estimate, then, you know, maybe he's better off here. Who knows? All right. So another way is earning commission. Depending on the type of thing you're selling and really how expensive they are, commission, you could work for 100% commission. In other words, you only make money if you sell stuff. Or it could be a combination of you get a commission, but you also get a salary. Sometimes you only make commission if you sell above a certain amount of money, and that's to really make it so that it's really valuable to you to sell stuff. Before Best Buy was Best Buy, it was something called Future Shop. And at Future Shop, the people on the floor were all paid by mostly commission. They did get a little bit of salary, but the bulk of their pay came from commission. I hated that because when you walked in, you would be accosted by like 10 different sales associates all trying to sell you what you want, and really, really, really annoying for people like me who are like, leave me alone, I know what I want, I'm gonna go get it, I'm gonna leave. So I didn't like that, but some people do. All right, so in example 3, we have Rajan, Eric, and Lucy. So Raj, because I'm too lazy to write the whole thing, Eric, and Lucy. And they're all paid commission, but they're paid in different ways. So Raj is paid straight commission of 5% of his total sales. So just real simple, he gets 5% of his sales. So that's easy. Eric gets $250 per week plus 2% commission of anything he sells over $5,000. So he doesn't start getting commission unless he sells more than $5,000 worth. So no commission on the first 5, but after that he gets to start earning commission. And Lucy is paid a graduated commission. So in other words, the more she sells, the more money she makes. So Lucy gets 2.5% on the first $3,000, and then 6% for anything over $3,000. All right. So if each person's sales for 1 week is $12,000, how much is each person going to take home? So each person sells $12,000. Who has the better deal with the boss? So $12,000. Raj gets just straight 5% of that. So 12,000 times 5%. Remember to change it to a decimal. So just divide by 100. So 12,000 times 5% is $600. So that's easy. Raj gets $600 for the week. What about Eric? Eric gets $250 no matter what. If Eric just sits and stares at his phone for the week, he gets $250. He won't keep his job for very long, but you know. But if he's a real go-getter, and he can sell a lot, he gets 2% for anything over $5,000. And he sold $12,000 worth of stuff. So how much over the 5,000 did he do? Well, 12,000 minus 5,000 is $7,000. So he gets to earn commission on $7,000 of his sales, because the first 5 he gets nothing. But after that, so for $7,000, he gets 2%. So 2%. So 7,000 times 2%. So he gets $140 in commission. Plus, remember, he gets $250 just for showing up to work. So he gets $390 for the week. He doesn't have a very good deal with his boss. He needs to go renegotiate, because this guy made the same sales and he's making $600. That's a significant difference. So let's see what kind of a deal Lucy has. So Lucy, remember, sells $12,000. On the first $3,000, she makes 2.5%. So 0.025. So 3,000 times 0.025. So she makes a whole $75 on the first 3,000 that she sells. Anything over 3,000, and she sold 12. So 12 minus the 3 that she already got commission on, that's $9,000. So on $9,000, she gets 6%. Okay, so 9,000 times 6% is $540. So she gets $540 at the 6%, and she gets that $75 from the first 3,000. So she's actually making $615 for the week. She's actually got the best deal going with her boss. Sometimes you're not paid commission, but sometimes there will be incentives in jobs. For instance, in my husband's job, he works as an electrical inspector. So every time he goes and he does an inspection, they have to pay for that. My husband's work has a program where they keep track of how much money he brings into the company every year. He gets a certain percentage of his sales back as a bonus. So the more work he does, the bigger the bonus he gets at the end of the year. I think he gets like 1% of his sales or something. So while 1% doesn't sound like a whole lot, if you were doing $250,000 in sales, 1% actually works out to be a pretty nice chunk of change. All right, so that is kind of how that works out. I think there's one more example. Yeah. All right, so there's one more example, and the one more example, it doesn't happen very often, but I do know of, some very specific instances where it's used. And this is called earning income by piecework. And what that means is you're making something and you get paid by how many you make. So unfortunately, people who are working in sweatshops, very often that's how it works. So if you're putting together, say, sweaters, you get paid by how many sweaters you can put together. But it doesn't have to be a horrible job either. My cousin used to be a glass blower, and he worked in Toronto for this glass blowing company. And they made, I don't know if you've seen them, they're like these glass balls that people hang in their gardens and stuff for decorations. He made those. That's what this company made. And so he got paid. He would go to work and make all these glass balls, and he got paid by how many he could make. So if he wanted to make more money, he could stay longer and make more of them. And so if you were really good at it and you could make them really fast, you could make more money more quickly. So Tanya works at a service station cleaning cars. Here's another way that is piecework. Car detailing is a big deal now. It used to be everybody cleaned their own cars, but now people don't really have time for that. So they call it car detailing. What that actually means is someone will clean your car for you. Sometimes it's the inside, sometimes it's the outside, sometimes it's both. But you get paid, like a lot of places get paid, or especially if you're working for yourself, you get paid by how many cars you can clean. So Tanya works at a service station cleaning cars. She gets paid $22 per car that she can clean. On average, she can do 6 cars per day. If she works 5 days per week, what is her average income in 1 week? Okay, so first off, if she can do 6 in a day and she's working 5 days, 6 times 5 is 30 cars. In a week, she's gonna clean 30 cars. And she gets paid $22 per car. So I'm just gonna do 30 times 22, which is going to be $660. So her income for the week, for 1 week, is $660. Again, what I want you to keep in mind is all of these figures that we're figuring out is what's called gross pay. It is what you earn and says on your paycheck that you earned. After that, then the government comes in and starts taking chunks of it away before you even get to see it. Again, now we have direct deposit. So would $660 be deposited into her account? No way. All right, $660 would not be what's deposited into her account. It's what she earned, but it's not the amount she gets to take home to pay her bills with. All right, so the next section, when we move on to the next section, which will not be until Thursday, but when we move on to the next section, we're going to start talking about how do they figure out then what do you actually get to take home? What is your net income? We're going to start talking about how do they figure those things out. Again, probably at least a couple of times throughout this chapter, we'll do a Zoom meeting so that I can answer some questions, because a lot of times you guys actually have questions about how this works in real life. So we'll probably do 1 or 2 Zoom meetings like that. And I'm already probably going to be editing out a couple of things in this chapter just for time's sake. All right, so I will see you on Wednesday for your test at 11 o'clock.